Is Kirby Smart broken in College Football 26 Dynasty? To find out, we're going to see how many different national championships he can win in 3 seasons with 3 different teams in College Football 26 Dynasty. I'm not going to jump into any games or do any in-season recruiting. All I'm going to do is take on a new team each season and jump into the transfer portal to see if I can do any kind of improvements to the team before we get started in the next season. Other than that, it's all up to Kirby Smart's coaching ability to see if we can win a national championship every single season. So let's get started. We're going to sim to the first CFP poll with Georgia, see if we can get this team to the national championship, and at the end of the season, we'll pick our first new job. So a bit of a tough start, but Georgia's still in a good position here. We're 5-2 with losses kind of back-to-back at Tennessee by 1 and then by 3 against Alabama at home early on in the season. But we're still number 6 in the country. We have a top 25 matchup with Florida coming up and then a couple big matchups with Texas and Georgia Tech. All of, this is at home, and then we have 2 neutral site matchups as well. So 3 top 25 matchups to close it out. If we can win out, we're definitely in the playoff. We might even have a chance to lose one of these games if we end up doing that, because we are so high up in the CFP poll, but really we want to win out to get this first national championship and start this off on the right foot. Okay, so going into the Georgia Tech game, Georgia Tech has fallen off a little bit, so it's number 4 in the country against an unranked team. We're in line for an SEC championship game if Auburn can beat Alabama. Texas A&M, I'm not sure what the tiebreaker situation is there, but if Auburn could beat Alabama and we can beat Georgia Tech, we're in the SEC championship game, basically punching our ticket to the CFP. Even if we don't get to the SEC championship game, we're probably in the CFP, being number 4 in the country, as long as we win this game against Georgia Tech. So probably the best scenario for us, we do get the win against Georgia Tech, but we don't make it to the SEC championship game because Alabama beat Auburn. So we're in the playoff as number 4. We're probably not getting the first round bye after the SEC championship game. Either way, we're in with at least a home game in the first round. As expected, we don't get the first round bye, but we get a home game in the first round. We're playing USF, who has Heisman Trophy winner Byron Brown, who wins, I think, every single season in the first year of a dynasty. So we're facing off against USF in that first round. Now, we don't just want to win here. We want to win on our next job. And I think that the best next job is clearly Michigan. We're going to move to the Big Ten. We're going to take this job. So we'll finish off the season with Georgia. We're going to start with Michigan next season and see if we can win back-to-back national championships. But it starts in this playoff run. And I'm trying to figure out how to do like rebuild videos and have some input on the games without actually jumping into the games. So I'm going to make some changes here. I'm going to keep we're going to stay with a normal strategy for our halfback auto subs, but I want to grind it out with the wide receivers, and I want to grind it out with my defensive tackles, and I want to grind it out with my linebackers. Just looking at the depth chart, these are the positions that we have the most top heavy. So I want to make sure that those positions are in the games as we go through the college football playoff. We'll see if that has any effect. Let me know in the comments if that has any effect. And also make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to say the grinded out strategy with wide receivers worked here. I'm going to move to this side. As you can see, 17 receptions for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns from Zachariah Branch. That is why we put the grinded out strategy in for wide receivers for this game. We got the win. We have the National Offensive Player of the Week. Moving on to the second round, where we'll match up against Oklahoma, which was almost the SEC championship game. We're playing in the Cotton Bowl, which is a little bit of a disadvantage for us as Georgia, but I think if Zachariah Branch can have a similar game as he had against USF, we should have a good chance. Let's look at what our staff should look like, because we need to hire our coaches here for our Michigan job. I've tried to hire Rhett Lashley as a coordinator before. It didn't work out for me super well, but I think it's going to work out here. As long as we can hold on to Underwood, we should be good with a spread offense from Rhett Lashley. And then let's see what we can do with the defensive side of the ball. I like the Southern California pipeline that Dave Aranda is going to get us. I might make some moves in the transfer portal once we get to Michigan, just so we can kind of keep this alive. I think I want to have a little bit more input in this than I originally set out. Okay, we get past Oklahoma. We're going to take on Nebraska in the Peach Bowl in the semifinal. That's essentially a home game for us, even though we're taking on the number 1 overall team. We got Rhett Lashley for our offensive coordinator. Do we get Aranda for the defensive coordinator? We do. Okay, so we're pretty well set up for this second season with Michigan. So we did level up, but with Kirby Smart, it gets pretty expensive to make any changes as he has a lot of abilities already. So there's nothing that we can really level up with the 10 coins that we got from the level up. So we're just going to go ahead and sim through this Peach Bowl and see if we can knock off Nebraska. Let's actually look at the bracket and see who we're lining up to play if we do get these wins. So we crushed USF, beat Oklahoma by 8. Nebraska's the number 1 overall seed, Big Ten champion. If we win this, we'll take on either Oregon or Duke. Hopefully Duke, if we can get this win, and we should be well on our way to our first national championship. We're going to the national championship. We're going to Miami. This has been a great run to start off. It's really been led by Zachariah Branch. The grinded out strategy for the wide receivers has definitely worked. I mean, even Dylan Bell is jumping in. He had 8 for 91 and a touchdown against Nebraska. We're taking on the Ducks in the Dan Lanning Bowl in Miami in the national championship. Based on my experience, Georgia crushes in this game. Let's look at the bracket here. Yeah, so we absolutely killed Nebraska after having a little bit of a tougher game against Oklahoma. This game here, I feel confident about it. We're going to go ahead and sim through it and see what we can do with this first national championship game appearance. All right, just as we take on the Michigan job, we get the national championship in our first season in Georgia. That's 1 for 1. We got quite a few great wins towards the end of the season after starting off pretty tough with those kind of back-to-back losses. Tennessee, then a bye, then a loss at Alabama. But Georgia pulls it out in the end. I really liked the changing of the strategy there. We're actually going to do a little bit of work in the transfer portal just because I want to be a little bit more engaged in this video. And really, I'm trying to work out how to best do like rebuild videos and how to best kind of integrate different things into this because there's not a lot of kind of levers to pull in college football 26 for videos outside of just playing the games. Not a terrible talent drain as far as players leaving. We're going to try to see if we can get Justice Haynes to stay. So we got Justice Haynes back. That's a big get. Our number 1 running back. Let's see if maybe we can get these guys too. We have the persuasion, so let's see if we can bring them back in. Okay. We got 2 of them to stay. I don't think this guy's going to stay. Yeah, okay. I don't care so much about Herb Street. Yeah, so we're gonna pass on over on those guys. We got a couple 90s on the defensive side, well, on offensive line with El Hadid, a senior that's leaving. And then we've got a couple big guys on the defensive side. So we're going to have to probably reload on the defensive side a little bit here. But importantly, we bring back Haynes and we bring back Underwood. We've got Rhett Lashley coming in as our offensive coordinator. Dave Aranda might help us get some of those Southern California guys into our program in the transfer portal. So we're on a good start with Michigan to get our second straight national championship. So we killed it in the transfer portal. We got the number 1 player at a position of need on right edge. We brought in a bunch of good players to reload the defense. We only missed out on 2 players that we wanted. One was a halfback that was kind of a luxury position, and we got another halfback to replace him. And then one was a wide receiver that we tried to jump in and steal at the end. Couldn't quite do it, but we have wide receivers and running backs. That was our strength, was our skill positions and quarterbacks. We needed to rebuild the offensive line and get that defense stacked back up, which we were able to do in the transfer portal. I know I said I wasn't going to do all this, but I jumped into it and I thought this makes a better video if we do a little bit of active transfer portal. And we're not going to recruit during the season. When we switch to a new team, though, we're going to get in the transfer portal and try to get the team rebuilt from what failed at the season before. And we leveled up again, but I'm going to save it to get the tactician ability because I think that's the thing that could help us the most with the challenge that we're currently doing, which is to get some kind of game day bonuses while we're not coaching. We end up with the number 2 transfer class in the country. Georgia gets the number 1. Of course, they're kind of banking off of what we just did, which is win the national championship. We're going to flip that around on them. We're going to take some of the high-end freshmen that were currently at Michigan, improve them up, and win with the transfers that we brought in. Looking at it, we got like 390-plus overalls even before stat improvements. Auto subs are back on. We got a recruiting situation figured out. We have this game against Oklahoma in week 2 that we absolutely do not need. We're going to just replace that with FCS Midwest team. We're not going to risk losing to Alabama or losing to Oklahoma in week 2 when we have Indiana, Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State all on our schedule. UCLA might also pop up. They tend to do that sometimes. So we have enough games on our schedule to get us into the college football playoff. No need to have that Oklahoma game early on in the season. Okay, we've sent to the Oregon game in week 8. We're 6-0 to start the season. This is a top 5 matchup that we have here. Just beat Penn State. Let's see by how much. By 5. We're playing at Autzen in week 8 here against Oregon with this two undefeated teams. Looks like Ohio State has one loss on the resume, but probably also going to be a top 25 matchup, at least maybe top 10 matchup. And like we said, UCLA tends to pop off in year 2 or 3 for whatever reason, because I guess Nico gets better with UCLA. So we're going to have another ranked matchup that we didn't have on the schedule in the beginning of the season. That's why we got rid of the Oklahoma game. Let's sim to the CFP rankings and see where we're at. We took care of business in Eugene, winning by almost 20 points. We're number 2 in the first CFP poll. We have a playoff matchup as it currently sits, a top 12 matchup with UCLA this week here. And then, of course, we have Ohio State on the road to end the season. We're going to sim up to that game against Ohio State to see where we're at. But it looks like we're pretty well in line for the playoff. And the recruits that we brought in have just keep gotten better. We were 89, 89, 89 across the board to start the season. We're up to 97, 96, 99. That is what a transfer portal class can do for you. I simmed a little too far, but we tripped up somewhere along the lines here. So we ended up taking care of UCLA pretty handily, but we lost to Michigan State by 3 in week 11, which is our lone blemish on our resume here. Ended up beating Ohio State, which was important because we didn't want to have 2 losses. So we're in line for a first round bye, and we're playing probably Oregon or Penn State in the conference championship game. Let's look at these conference standings here. Or did we miss out on it by virtue of that loss to Michigan State? Looks like we maybe missed out on the conference championship game, which maybe is fine because we're going to get a first round bye either way, and a loss in the conference championship game might have knocked it out. Let's sim a couple of weeks and see what happens. So we won basically every defensive award available. I'm not sure by what logic, but we missed out on the Big Ten championship game to Penn State and Oregon, who each had one loss in conference to Michigan. So I'm not sure why we weren't in the Big Ten championship game and one of them was out. I guess we lost to a worse team, but we were the team that beat, I don't know. I don't understand the logic of CFB 26 sometimes. But we get Jacksonville State in the first round, yet another G5 matchup for us like we had last year with Georgia. So it's a good start. Let's see what jobs there are available because, again, we need to keep moving so we can get more wins in the national championship. We're going to take this Oregon job. We're going to take the Oregon job. What a amazing setup for us in the third season. Kirby Smart goes, so we go Georgia, Michigan, Oregon. This is Kirby Smart roulette at its finest. So we get the big win in the first round, and look who we're playing in the Cotton Bowl. Georgia and Michigan, the Kirby Smart Bowl in the second season. If we can knock them off, that would be great. We're going to make the same changes here with the auto subs. We're going to focus on making sure that we have our top wide receivers and our top defensive linemen in at the end of the season here, specifically defensive. And I think our whole defensive line is not the deepest. So we're going to make sure that we have our top players in and the linebacker as well in these final games of the season because we absolutely need to make sure that we have our best players in as we are not as deep. Let's look at this bracket here. Georgia and Michigan, we face off in the Cotton Bowl, and then we could very well face off against Oregon in the semifinal, who we beat last year in the national championship at Georgia, and who will be coaching next season in the third season of our sim here. And I think I'm actually only going to make this 3 years because 5 years is a lot of work to do for this. So we're going to actually cut it down to 3 years, and we need to hire some staff. I'm going to try to bring Scott Frost back as Oregon offensive coordinator way back in the day, back in the 2010s. He was offensive coordinator under Chip Kelly before Mark Helfrich. So we're going to try to bring him back into the fold. And then we're going to try to get Kalani Sitake to come over. The Utah pipeline is probably pretty good. So I'm going to bring in Kalani Sitake and Scott Frost if possible. And hopefully we can win this Georgia game. Let's see. So we got both coordinators that we wanted, but we did end up losing to Georgia in the quarterfinal game by 3 in the Cotton Bowl. So we aren't able to pull out. Oregon also loses against Ohio State. So we don't get 2 straight national championships, but maybe we can get 2 out of 3 with Kirby Smart. So Georgia ends up winning 2 straight national championships. I'm not sure what that says about Kirby Smart. Is it that the recruiting class that we brought in the season that we were there was so good and the effects of the national championship was so good that they had to win another one? I know they got a great transfer portal class, so maybe that's due to the coach that came in, which I didn't really check who that was. Dabo Sweeney comes in, so the second highest rated coach in the game goes into Georgia, takes over for what Kirby Smart already built on, and then wins another national championship. Let's see if we can take it back with Oregon in this season. Maybe we'll face off against Dabo in the national championship and get our revenge. This is a stupid quarterback room. Dampier must have started last season. We've still got Dante Moore there, who doesn't look like he's leaving. Maddox Madsen is in for whatever reason. He's graduating. And then Damon Williams is also there. So 4 starting quarterbacks all transferred in or 3 starting quarterbacks all transferred in. Only one of them got to start with Dante Moore still there. So I don't understand why that is. We have an amazing running back room. We still got Davison and De'Aaron Hill here. So we're going to do well there. We have a couple wide receivers that are wanting to leave, but we still got DeCorian Moore. Kingston is going to graduate. Jurian Dickey is looking to transfer out. We're going to try to keep him in. But this is a stacked team that we should be able to win with. Especially if we can get Jamari Johnson and Dickinson to stay, we should definitely have a really good team here. Maybe we're going to have to rebuild this offensive line a little bit because we have quite a few guys graduating. All right, let's see if we can get Johnson doesn't look like he's coming back. Dickey might. Okay. We're not going to try to convince Moga to stay. I think we'll try to convince Moga to stay because we need a backup quarterback. We have a lot of guys leaving. Okay, so we get Moga to stay. We're going to let Damon go. We're going to see if we can get Donaldson to stay, even though I don't think we need him. Let's try some of these other guys here. Okay, so we get the free safety. We get Davis to stay. Let's just try to keep all these guys that we can. Okay, so at least we got Davis to stay. Most of the other players, I mean, we don't really have a use for Damon Williams as we are keeping Dante Moore. Lose Tuioti this year. That sucks. Yeah, we're losing some players on the offensive line. Dampier is going to be a first-round pick. And we lose Hughes, but again, we're good in the backfield. So I'm happy with what we've got going on here, but we're going to have to probably rebuild the offensive line and the defense just like we did with Michigan in the first season. We did a pretty good job in the transfer portal yet again this season. We were able to get Jurian Dickey to come back. We had one of our cornerbacks follow us from Michigan over to Oregon with Cam Calhoun. So we got some good things. We were really able to rebuild the offensive line. We already had 3 5-stars signed as freshmen when we got in here. One of them is a Will. This wide receiver is going to probably get some playing time here. And then this quarterback is probably more for the future. One that we missed out on was Rainey Sale, which is a linebacker from Washington, who ended up going back to Washington, but we did a really good job, I think, in the transfer portal, filling out what we needed after an already good team. Again, we get the second best overall class, only behind Georgia, which is tough to beat Dabo now. And then we get the number 1 transfer portal class this year by putting in 14 4-star recruits to go along with an already top-level team. So I think that we've really got something going here with Oregon in our final season to get our 2nd out of 3 national championships. On offense, we're about to be an absolute juggernaut. We've got Dante Moore going into senior season as a 93. He sat for a 2nd season after starting behind Dampier last year. We have 2 90 overalls with Davison and Hill in the backfield. Don't have a fullback, but that doesn't matter. We have DeCorian Moore, who's a 97. He improved slightly, but there's only so much that he can improve. Look at those numbers: speed, acceleration, agility. It's crazy. Dickey, we got to come back. He's almost a 90 overall. Miles, I believe we brought in. And then we have some wide receivers that have already been here. Tight end, maybe we're a little bit weaker with only Plug because we weren't able to bring Johnson back, but still, we're still pretty strong. Our offensive line across the board, we're all pushing 90 here. We had to make some moves around. Bricks came in as a tackle. He's actually going to start at right guard, and he improved by 5 with the training. So we're pretty strong there. This freshman went up 16 points. I don't think I've ever seen that much of an improvement. The other weak spot that we have is at linebacker. We're really strong on the defensive line, especially on the inside, but our inside linebackers are not super strong. So we brought down Lopa and Lawrence from safety positions, strong and free safety respectively, and hopefully they'll be able to fill in there for us. But our defensive backfield is crazy strong. Finney and Calhoun are going to shut down on the outside. We've got quite a few other guys in the high 80s. Our safeties, again, like that's the reason we brought them down is because we have really good safeties on the back end. Flowers is going to be a 92. So this team is set to really dominate in the passing game on both sides. Should be able to run the ball very well as well. But maybe if they can get past our defensive line, we might have some trouble in the linebacking area. So we're 99s across the board, which I would say bodes well for our success this season. We did have this Baylor game here, which I swapped out for San Diego State because Baylor is top 25. There was no need for that because look at this schedule. Ohio State, Michigan, UCLA, Penn State, we get Maryland, and then Nebraska all in a row there. A couple road games there. We got to play at the Big House, at the Rose Bowl. We got to play at Nebraska, at Maryland. We get Penn State at home, and we have to play at Husky Stadium. So this is a crazy run here after the bye with no bye games, no bye weeks. We have the open week, and then we have no bye weeks leading up through that Washington game. We could find ourselves in the Big Ten Championship. So this is a crazy schedule for Oregon. 10-2 gets us in the playoff, but we really have a tough stretch there. Hopefully we at least make it to the playoffs in this final season. Going into the Michigan rematch, we're number 1 in the country, 6-0, just beat Ohio State to stay undefeated. So it's been a pretty good start to the season. Beat Ohio State by 5. Ohio State really hasn't had a great start to the season, though, so maybe that's not as big of a win as it seems to be. It looks like we're going to have a maybe potentially 1 versus 2 matchup towards the end of the season. Michigan already has a loss, but we have to play them on the road in a night game. That could be a tough one as it's a top 10 matchup. We really don't have any easy games left. Maybe the Maryland game, but other than that, we don't have any more easy games left. We got that out of the way in the early part of our schedule. But we're finally going to upgrade Kirby Smart and give him the tactician. Hopefully this gives us an opportunity to do a little bit better towards the end of the season here and close it out, because we've got now level 84 Kirby Smart with the tactician on there that might give us a little bit more of an advantage when we get into those tough games at the end of the season. We're number 1 in the first CFP poll. We snuck past Michigan by 1 on the road. We beat UCLA by 4 in the Rose Bowl. So we now have another top 10 matchup with Penn State at home, luckily. Nebraska's fallen off a little bit. They just had the 1 loss, but it hurt them a lot. So we're number 1 in the country. The Maryland and Washington games don't look quite as tough, but we're definitely in it here with a win against Penn State. I think we're probably in the playoff and probably in the Big Ten championship game. So we did end up losing the Nebraska game. I think that this is the senior season for Raiola as well. So that's kind of a big QB matchup if he did stay. So we dropped down to number 8, which is kind of crazy. We're number 1 all the way through there. We lose a top 10 game and we lose 7 spots. Not exactly sure why that's the case. We're only 1 above Michigan. Don't really understand that. We have a ton of top 25 wins, couple top 10 wins. Not sure why we're number 8, but either way, we got a win at Washington. I think we're in the Big Ten championship game, or at least we should be because we beat Michigan. Yeah, it should be us in Nebraska. For whatever reason, it might not be that, but we will most likely be in the Big Ten championship game if we win this game against Washington. Okay, so we made it in. We get a rematch against Nebraska in the Big Ten championship game after beating Washington. This is the matchup it should be, so this is good. Hopefully we can win and get a first-round bye. We've had to go 2 straight seasons with having a first-round game. Been the 5 seed, so it's been good, but I don't think we'll get the 5 seed if we lose here, as we're already number 5. We get the first and only conference championship of the video. This is the only conference championship game that we've been in. We've kind of weirdly been held out of the last 2 when we've been in a tie with everybody. Now we know how Miami feels. You just got to take care of business, I guess, to get into those games. So we are we're still in the Army-Navy, so this isn't finalized, but it looks like we're going to get a first-round bye and maybe a Rose Bowl game and probably a rematch against Michigan, who again was our last season's team. As of right now, Georgia is not going to be in the college football playoff. They've won 2 straight, and they end up losing this season. Just for shits and giggles, just to see what jobs would be available. It was, Arkansas, Virginia Tech, and Wisconsin, so not as good of jobs as we've been offered so far. Is there anything that we would have taken on here? No, there's really nothing here. We'll check next week as well, but I think this is probably a good time to stop on this video. Probably a good decision to shorten it up a little bit from the 5 that we originally were planning, because it's hard to get another job here. So we are, in fact, going to be playing the winner of Michigan-Miami in the Rose Bowl in the quarterfinal. There it is, a revenge game for Kirby Smart against Michigan in the Rose Bowl, a classic Pac-10, Big Ten matchup. Let's check just to see if there was any other job offers. Yeah, so nothing that we would really leave for. Maybe Tulane. It'd be interesting to see him at Tulane, see if we could get a win as a G5 team, but this is a good spot to stop it with the 3 seasons, because we would definitely be going downhill with job offers. We're going to shorten up the rotation for the linebacking core, I think that's really the important one to shorten up. Our defensive tackles are deep. I think we're also going to shorten it up a little bit with the defensive ends because we're not quite as deep there. But everywhere else, we are a really deep team. So I think we want to take advantage of having fresh bodies in this game against Michigan. Everywhere, we're deep. Wide receiver, running back, tight end, we're not really deep, but there's not a real drop down from top to bottom. They're just all kind of average players. Okay, looks like we roasted them through the air. The game froze on me after we had won that game, so I was getting kind of pissed off. Yeah, Corey Moore has 12 for 160 and 3 touchdowns to win the first round game in the Rose Bowl against Michigan. Who are we going to face off? And he's National Player of the Week. We know it. DeCorian Moore, best player. So we're going to play LSU in the Cotton Bowl. We should be favored here as the 3 seed. I didn't see we did see what other jobs. So we're going to face off against LSU here. Barely beat Michigan. Beat them by 3. I think we beat them by 3 or 2 earlier on in the season. So double victory against Michigan, but we really snuck past them in those 2 games. So we're going to play LSU. I didn't realize LSU and Tulane played in the first round in an All-Louisiana Bowl. That's pretty good. We're going to play LSU for a right to go to the national championship in New Orleans. And then the winner of Texas and Nebraska is who we'll be facing off with in the national championship if we do get that win. So this is a big game here. We really are trying to get 2 out of 3 national championships, what I think is an overall win if we can end up doing that with how we did this video. Our players keep breaking records, which is breaking the game. I've had to close out and come back in multiple times. Cam Calhoun, who we brought over from Michigan, who we originally brought into Michigan as a transfer, does it for us in the semifinal. We beat LSU. We're making it to the national championship game. We really have done work in the transfer portal. I like that element of the video. We get our 3rd game against Nebraska. 1-1 so far. They beat us in the regular season. We beat them in the Big Ten championship game. Can we knock them off in the final game in the national championship to win our 2nd national championship? There it is, folks. We get 2 out of 3 national championships with Kirby Smart. DeCorian Moore goes off yet again. 10-259. And check this out. 4 touchdowns in the national championship game against Nebraska. Breaks some all-time records in that game. Really goes off. It was, I think, a godsend to come into the Ducks in the final season. I think we probably should have won with Miami. I'm not sure, or with Michigan. I'm not sure why we didn't win with them, but let's just look. We won 48-34 and absolutely destroyed them through the air. So yeah, we got the 2 best quarterbacks in college football. I know Arch Manning won the Heisman Trophy this year, but the 2 best quarterbacks in college football with Raiola and Dante Moore. Dante Moore goes for 417, 4 touchdowns, and 259 of those yards, and all 4 of those touchdowns go to DeCorian Moore. Davison and Hill did what they needed to do on the ground. It seems like this should be a flipped stat line, but Hill gets the 2 touchdowns for us on the ground. That's what needed to happen at the end there. 2 national championships in 3 seasons at 2 different schools for Kirby Smart. That's the Kirby Smart roulette.